Hello everyone, I'm Katrina and today I'm going to be recommending some of my favourite standalone novels. I think it was about 3 years ago that I'd last shared my favourite standalone books, so if you wanted to take a look at that, I will leave a link to it in the description for you. Most of those I still adore and would definitely recommend, but since then I have read a lot more books and have a lot more that have bumped themselves up onto my favourites list. So today I'm going to be sharing with you some of my current favourite standalone books. And these aren't really in any particular order. It was hard enough cutting it down to a list of 10, so I didn't even want to think about ranking them. Without further ado, let's get on to my favourites. The Narrow Road to the Deep North by Richard Flanagan follows an Australian man prior to, during and after World War II, in which he was captured and spent a lot of his time in a Japanese prisoner of war camp. This book completely sucked me in unawares. The first half I was just reading along, enjoying it, and it got to a point where I was just like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. I cannot pinpoint the exact moment and exactly what changed for me, but it just got to the point throughout the story where I was so completely enthralled, completely connected to the story and the characters. There's one quote in particular that I think really sums up my personal experience with this book, and that is, "A good book," he had concluded, "leaves you wanting to reread the book. A great book compels you to reread your own soul." Honestly, just so many times while I was reading this, I had to stop and just think about what I had just read and process it all. It was just so incredibly intense at some points, and I just... even now, thinking about it, I'm just kind of losing my breath. I also did a full book review of this as well, so if you want to know a little more of my thoughts on it, I'll leave the link down below. More Happy Than Not by Adam Silvera is an LGBTQ+ novel that feels like a contemporary, but it does have a science fiction element in that there is a procedure that exists in this world that can alter your memories. This book was emotionally draining. My gosh, was it draining. I just couldn't help but empathize and feel all of the feelings that pretty much every character in this book felt. I was able to just really deeply connect with so many of the characters, and it was definitely the last half of this book in particular that just completely gripped me. Through the Woods by Emily Carroll is a graphic novel, and this is actually a series of 5 shorter graphic stories. And my gosh, they were eerie and spooky. The illustrative style itself is really beautiful at moments, but also really creepy at other times as well. Just so much darkness and shadow contrasted with moments like this. And the stories themselves just freaked me out. I think I was reading this at night, which probably wasn't the smartest idea. But even while I was creeped out by the stories, I was glued to the page. The Martian by Andy Weir. I actually listened to this one on audiobook and would highly recommend it if you are interested in picking this up at some point. The narrator did a fantastic job. This is about a mission to Mars that goes wrong and leaves one man stranded on Mars. I think one of my favourite things about this book was the main character's humour. Despite his extremely dire situation he's fighting for survival, he still managed to keep a sense of humour that was just so uplifting and contributed to my entertainment throughout the entire book. Partly because of that, and also as well the narration came into this. During those moments where it goes into a bit more detail about the science and mathematics, which just goes over my head. I don't understand science or maths. I can't wrap my head around it. Even during those moments, I was really intrigued and fascinated and actually wanted to know. But most of all, I just really wanted to know if Mark managed to survive this entire ordeal, because the odds were certainly not in his favour. George by Alex Gino is a middle grade own voices novel about a transgender girl named George. It's a really short book, and if ever you have a quick moment to pick something up, I would certainly recommend this one. It was, as a whole, just so beautiful. Not only the story and the characters, but the writing style as well. It was absolutely stunning. And to be honest, books like these that do deal with diverse topics and are aimed at younger readers, I think are really incredibly important. And the reason why I think it's so important is because it helps those younger readers become more aware and understanding of gender fluidity, whether this be developing empathy for people around them who identify differently than themselves, or even in coming to understand and accept their own identity. I would highly recommend this, not only to younger readers, but to older as well. I I was blown away by this. Wonder by R.J. Palacio is also a middle grade novel that follows Auggie, who has a facial deformity and he's just starting school. I responded really similarly to George with Wonder, I think. I just fell in love with Auggie and his story and just seeing the interactions with some of the other characters, both good and bad. Honestly, I was just so impacted by this beautiful, beautiful book. It had me crying tears of joy. And once again, I think books like this are so important, especially for younger readers to experience, and in the case of this one, as it deals with disability. The First 15 Lives of Harry August by Claire North is a book that I listened to on audiobook and do not own a copy of yet, but I'm rather disappointed in myself on that fact. This is a very interesting one to describe. It's not really dealing with time travel, but it's kind of reliving a life over and over again. And it's not really reincarnation in that it's the one person reliving the same life over and over again. They're not reincarnating into a different body or as a different being. They're reliving the same life and they still retain the memories from their past lives. Once again, the narration style of this was fantastic. I'm so happy that I listened to it on audiobook. I definitely want to reread this as a physical book, so I'll get my hands on a physical copy at some point, but there's just so much that happens in this book. There's a whole cast of really fascinating characters that we meet and get to learn about throughout Harry August's several lives, and honestly, I was just so captivated throughout the entire thing. The main conflict of the book inserts itself a little further on, but even still, I was just so intrigued by the lives that this man experienced and just wanted to know about that. I would happily have read a book that explains all of his lives and not have there be this main overarching conflict, but when that dropped into the story, it just got even better. Ready Player One by Ernest Cline is a science fiction book that focuses on a virtual reality video game. After I first read this book, I'm pretty sure I reread it about a month or two later. So if that doesn't convey how much I enjoyed this book, I don't know what will. I just loved the kind of mystery and treasure hunt aspect of the book and the adventures, and it was just such a captivating and entertaining read. The second time that I did read this book, it was also an audiobook, so I would definitely recommend. The narrator did a fantastic job, but once again, I did also do a full book review on this one, so if you want to know more of my thoughts, the link is down below. My Sister Rosa by Justine Labalestiere is about a young girl named Rosa who is a psychopath, so we follow her and her brother as he's kind of dealing with all of the trouble that she makes. Originally, I rated this book 4.5 out of 5 stars in my review that I put on my channel last year, but since then, I have changed my mind. This is probably my favorite book of 2016. Definitely a 5-star rating now. I just can't stop thinking about this book. It hasn't left my mind, and every time someone asks for a recommendation, this is the first book that comes to mind. I'm also pretty sure that I've gifted like 3 copies of this book as well because I just want everybody to read it. I just really love the diversity that we find in this book and the characterization, as well as the growing tension throughout the book. The first half is a little slower in pace, but the last half, it was just so incredibly epic and I cannot stop thinking about it. And lastly, but certainly not least, is The Book Thief by Markus Zusak. I can't talk about my favourites without mentioning this incredible book. This is another World War II novel and it's set in Germany. We follow a girl named Liesel who is a book thief. The 2 things I love most about this book is firstly the writing style. It is so beautiful, colourful and vivid and poetic, and it's also narrated by Death, which was a whole new experience, but also the characters. This is definitely a character-driven book, so I know a lot of the time people struggle with this because it's a bit slower pace, but the characters were just one of the things I love the most about this book. The way in which I fell in love with pretty much every single one of them. Despite my initial impressions of them, I just fell so in love. Once again, I've done a full book review of this as well, so for more of my thoughts, you can check that out in the description box. So those are just some of my favourite standalone books. I hope that you got some new recommendations if you haven't read any of the ones that I mentioned, but I would also really love it if you had any standalone recommendations that you wanted to share with me or anybody else in the comment section, then please leave those down below. Despite all of the books that I have to read, I always love new recommendations, so feel free to share those if you'd like. But thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will be back tomorrow with a new video talking about my favourite series. So until then, I'll see you guys in the comments. Bye!